having just announced that Moon Knight will be appearing in his own series on the Disney Plus streaming service. Many people might ask the question, who is Moon Knight? Now, this is a fair question. Though the character has remained somewhat popular in his history, he is also one of the more fringe characters within the Marvel Universe. While most people think of him as simply a Batman ripoff, this is actually very far from the truth. Yes, both characters are simply well-trained human beings. Moon Knight is marred by his own actions in his past, not the death of a loved one, though. Moon Knight is pushed by an Egyptian god, and he suffers from schizophrenia. Some of the most notable aspects of the character were not even introduced until far later, though. So let's take a minute and get to know this interesting fringe character. Created by Doug Monek and Don Perlin in 1975, Moon Knight first appeared in Werewolf by Night number 32. The character was not the hero that he would become, however, first appearing as a villain that was hired by the committee to capture Werewolf for their own nefarious means. Realizing that the monster would be used as a weapon, Moon Knight turned on his employers and worked alongside Werewolf to stop them. Moon Knight would prove popular enough to pop up a few times in the Werewolf by Night series until he received a few one-shots of his own and appearances in Marvel Spotlights and Marvel 2-in-1s, both anthology series. From there, the character would go on to star in the backup pages of the Hulk in Marvel Preview. It wasn't until 1980 that the character would finally receive his own series and get a fully fleshed out origin story. You see, he was born in Chicago, and Mark Spector would go on to join the US military before searching for his fortune as a mercenary for hire. One of his most reoccurring friends was Frenchie, a pilot who worked alongside him. The two would find themselves on the crew of Raoul Bushman, working jobs within Egypt. It was there that Mark would find himself at odds with Bushman over the death of Dr. Alarin, whose daughter Marlin he had fallen for. After the two fought, Mark was left for dead in the cold desert. Discovered by locals, he is brought to the temple of Khonshu, the Egyptian god of vengeance. The god offers Mark a choice: die now, or be reborn as his champion on Earth. Choosing life, Mark is reborn as Moon Knight, the Fist of Khonshu, and he defeats Bushman. With his allies, Mark returns to Chicago and takes up the mantle of a crime-fighting vigilante. Now, the original Moon Knight series would run until issue 38 in 1984. A miniseries would begin in 1985, known as the Fist of Khonshu. This series first introduced one of the lasting and original characteristics of the character, that Mark Spector was suffering from schizophrenia due to the stress of his various secret identities. No longer were those identities simply for Mark to fight crime easier, they were now their own separate personalities within his head. While the character would make several random appearances over the next few years, he would not receive his own series again until 1989, titled Mark Spector Moon Knight. In this new series, Mark gained a teenage sidekick, and he teamed up with several Marvel superheroes and ended the series by sacrificing himself to save his loved ones from the AI known as Seth. The series ended in 1994, and it wouldn't be until 1998 that Moon Knight would be resurrected in the Resurrection Wars, and the character wouldn't receive his own series again until 2006. Until that point, the fans would have to make do with the character appearing in the Marvel Knights miniseries and teaming up with various heroes on several occasions. 2006 would see the character updated, as most Marvel characters are when their universe is on a sliding scale. The updates would see Mark engulfed in the Gulf War before becoming a mercenary, and Frenchie secretly being in love with Mark the whole time. The series would see Moon Knight taking part in the Civil War event, siding with Tony Stark begrudgingly, and then returning to his life as a vigilante without much worry about what the world thought of him. When Norman Osborn took over as head of Hammer, he sent in the Thunderbolts to take out the unstable Moon Knight. Luckily, Mark was able to fake his death, and he hides in Mexico as Jack Lockley. Eventually, though, knowing that Norman Osborn has taken over the United States, Mark returns, vowing his vengeance for what Osborn and the Thunderbolts tried to do to him. Returning to New York, Mark began his career as Moon Knight once again. However, he now only seems to have the Jack Lockley persona and begins to gain the city's trust as a much saner, less violent hero. Moon Knight would go on to become a member of Captain America's Secret Avengers, appearing in the series until Hawkeye took over as team leader. The next Moon Knight series would begin in 2011, and it would see Mark Spector once again return. The hero would relocate to Los Angeles, where he would create a television show based on his history as Moon Knight. The series would give the character multiple personalities again, except this time, the characters would be based on Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Captain America. Eventually, Moon Knight would leave LA and return to New York. Here, he would be Moon Knight fighting against supernatural forces with his high-tech gadgets. He would also be the suit-wearing Mr. Knight, who works alongside the police force in a sort of advisory role, dealing with more normal crimes. In the all-new, all-different Marvel era, Mark would awaken in a mental hospital with no knowledge of his past. He would meet several people that seemed like old allies, but quickly begin to question his own sanity. It turns out that this was a test run by Khonshu, though, trying to heal Mark's broken mind. Coming to terms with his multiple personas, Mark embraced them and healed himself. He would then return to New York in the Marvel Legacy era, returning to a more normal version of the Moon Knight character. While it is unknown what the overall story of the Moon Knight television series will be, it will be quite interesting to see what they do with this character. If you want more information on your favorite comic books, consider subscribing to our channel or following us on Twitter at Comicstorian, where we can chat about them. You can also stick around and watch various things like comic book related lists and us reading some of your favorite books to you. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.